Hello everyone, it's Jeff, back with yet another video. I've been a busy boy this week. I'm not going to post this video. I'm making this on a Wednesday. I'll probably wait at least a day before I post it. I don't really want to overdo things here on the VC. I don't want you guys to get tired of me and say, oh my god, Kempin made another video, really? Ugh. So I'm going to pace myself here for the next little while. This video is a contest entry for Psyko's Platters. His contest is celebrating 500 subs, but he's already well past that. In his video, he already mentioned he was up to 519, which is pretty awesome. So congratulations on that. I'm one of your newer subscribers, but I've been going through some of your previous videos and really enjoying them. I like your style, and I like, as an fellow Illinoisan, former, I don't know, you're in Arkansas now, I guess. Former Chicagoland area resident. I can relate. I remember the blizzard of '79 as well, like you mentioned in your video. There was literally this much snow on top of our roof at our house in '79. I was all of 9 years old, 8 years old. And I remember my dad was so nervous about having that much snow on the roof, thinking that the roof was going to cave in, that he went up there with this little electric snowblower, and he was snow blowing our roof to get the extra snow off. And the drifts were nearly as high as the roof anyway in some areas, so I would climb up there with them and help them for a little while, and then I would just, pretend to slide off and go boom right into the snow. It was fun. It was the '70s. There were no helmets, there were no elbow pads, knee pads. If you crashed, you just got banged up and you picked yourself up and moved on. That's just the way life was back then. But anyway, I'm getting off track here. The point of this video, I'm going to try and keep this as short as I can, is got 3 questions, and I'm going to do my best to answer them satisfactorily. I'm making this as a video, and I'm going to answer all the questions in order to get the maximum number of entries per the contest rules, because I'm that kind of guy. So, without any further ado, the first question is, show your favorite bootleg. Now, bootlegs are not a large part of my collection. In fact, I only have 2. So I pulled them both, and I'm going to show them both because why not? Somewhere down the road, maybe I might get a little more into bootlegs, but these I just came across kind of by accident, or they were something that looked interesting that I just picked up for a decent price. First one being this here by Elvis Costello. 50 Million Elvis Fans Can't Be Wrong. That's also the name of a Elvis Presley album. Of course, copying it here and spoofing it a little bit. And this is, as you can see on the back here, one side is outtakes of songs from his first 2 albums, and the other side is a live show at the Agora in Cleveland, 12/5/77. So, yeah. It's pretty much an outtakes, demos, / live album. And I'll just, I'll pull this sleeve out just to show you. I found it kind of amusing. It says, home taping is killing music. Which I find quite amusing. And it's on the Slipped Disc record label. So it's kind of a cool little record label there. So yeah, that's my first bootleg. I don't know if I like this any better or worse than the other one. I kind of like them both equally. Which brings me to my second one. It's by The Clash. It's called Rat Patrol from Fort Bragg. And the story behind this is off the top of my head. you know, don't hold me to any hard and fast facts here. I'm just going off of what I read a couple years ago when I got this album. I picked up all the Clash albums, and this was included with it. What this was the original version of the Combat Rock album. And Rat Patrol from Fort Bragg was supposed to be the title instead of Combat Rock. And I'll just show you the set list. If you're familiar at all with the Combat Rock album, you'll notice that all the songs are here, just in a different running order from what made it onto the actual Combat Rock album. And this is actually a double album, and there's some instrumental, like one side of it is all instrumentals and alternate takes featuring different singers. Like there's a remix of Rock the Casbah with Ranking Roger from the English Beat guest starring. And I'll just show you this here because it's kind of cool. It's on orange, like marbled vinyl. You can see here, it's one of my prettier colored vinyl albums. You can kind of see the different streaks in it. And the other, both discs are this color. So I guess what the deal was the Clash recorded all these songs, and Mick Jones was producing, I think. I'm pretty sure. You know, if you're familiar with like the Sandinista album, that album has a very cold sound to it, kind of like a hollow, cold sound, and these songs here kind of fall in that same mold. And they ended up bringing in another producer. I believe it was Glenn Johns. He's a famous record producer, to kind of perk up these recordings, and they shuffled the order of the songs. I've got a copy of Combat Rock here. You'll see all the songs are there, but they're just in a different order. And I don't know if this was one of the things that helped lead to the breakup of the Clash, because I think Mick Jones was pretty pissed off about it. But for whatever reason, this was not the version of the album that they went with. They changed the title to Combat Rock, changed the running order, changed some of the songs around, did some re-recording. And yeah, it ended up being a big hit record for them. So this was my other bootleg that I've got to show. Rat Patrol from Fort Bragg by The Clash. It's not a bad record. I mean, I listened to it, and like I said, it sounds very much like Sandinista. They developed this like cold sound. I can't describe it any other way. It just seems very clinical. It's not like warm and upbeat. So there you go. That's the first question, your favorite bootlegs. The second question is signed album or CD, and a story to go with it. Once again, I don't have a lot of things that are signed. In fact, the only thing that I do is this CD right here. Let me take it out of the case, get a little bit less glare. This is by a guy called Davey Knowles. And I showed this, I think, on one of my Vinyl Tag videos. He was in a band called Backdoor Slam, and this was their first album called Roll Away. But when I saw Davey Knowles, he was solo. He was already broken off from the band, and he was opening for Jeff Beck. I saw him probably about 10 years ago now. I saw him open for Jeff Beck. And just in the back, right here in the middle, that's Davey Knowles. If any of you ever heard of him, he's a very good guitarist. He's got a very good voice. I think at that time he was only in his early 20s, but he sounded much older, much more worldly. And he plays, you know, electric blues. It's really good stuff. So when I saw the concert, after it was over, he was signing CDs. And so I liked his music. I liked his set so much I went up and bought one. And I don't really have a story to go with it. I basically just went up and said, you know, I'd like a CD, please. So he just grabs one and he signs it. And I told him, you know, he was really great. And he said thanks. And that was about it. I don't really have very many encounters with famous musicians, unfortunately. I have run into, speaking of, I know you like your Chicago musicians from the 60s and 70s. I have run into Jim Peterick from the Ides of March. I ran into him at a Radio Shack of all places, probably about, geez, maybe 10 or 15 years ago. And I don't think there even are Radio Shacks anymore. But I was in there for something, and I'm walking down the aisle. I'm looking at the shelves for whatever it is I'm looking for, and I turn my head and I see this guy. He's got this leather jacket on, and he's all tan, and I'm like, man, that guy looks familiar. But I couldn't quite place it, and it wasn't until later, as I was able to actually see his face, that I recognized him as Jim Peterick from Survivor and Ides of March and all that. I didn't really talk to him because I wasn't sure exactly who he was. He just looked familiar. But I hope that answers the question. I wish I had more famous encounters to get autographs from people, but I don't, unfortunately. So I'm hoping that will suffice. And the third question, which doesn't really involve records because it's all about telling what record got away. What record did you see or did you have your hands on? What record were you holding but you couldn't buy because you either didn't have the money or you didn't want to at the time or whatever, and you ended up regretting it. Geez, I could spend hours talking about that. I mean, there have been many instances at like estate sales where I would flip through records and I would see something and I would pause and look at it and be like, nah. I've changed my attitude when it comes to that. Basically, if I go to an estate sale now and I even remotely have an interest in a record, I grab it. Because there have been too many times where I've flipped and be like, I don't know if I want it. I don't know if it's too much, blah, 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 blah. And then, of course, I leave. I think about it some more, and I'll be like, oh, man, I should have took it. And then I go back, and it's gone. Specifically, I can tell you that the best estate sale I ever went to, the one where I got all kinds of classic albums like The Wall, Physical Graffiti, Houses of the Holy, Decade by Neil Young, almost the entire Stevie Ray Vaughan catalog, all for $1 each. I ended up buying like 30 records that day. I could have bought 30 more. I probably should have bought 30 more because there were many that ended up going back later, not to that sale, but I ended up looking those albums up online and searching for them. And like Straight Up by Badfinger, that was one I passed on. I passed on Lola by the Kinks, that album. I passed on that at that sale. There were a couple others. I'm trying to think of the most well-known ones. But yeah, anymore, I've learned my lesson. If I see something and I think I might want it, I just grab it and I'll carry it around with me while I'm looking at the rest of the sale, and I'll even think about it. And 9 times out of 10 now, I'll just buy it because I've been burned way too many times. I'm trying to think of other instances where that happened. I know right after Prince died in 2016, I was at an estate sale and I found a couple of his records and I learned my lesson. I had Purple Rain and 1999, and they were both like brand new. and there was a person right behind me waiting to get to the record box, and I saw those and I pulled them, and I'm glad I did. See, that was a case where I didn't let it get away. But I don't really have anything that famous like Paramount 78s like you had in your video, Mr. Psycho. But yeah, there's been any number of times where I missed out or just missed because somebody else in front of me grabbed it. There have been many cases of that. Geez, I don't feel like I've answered the question good enough. I'm trying to think here. I had my thoughts kind of in line, but now that I'm on camera, now my head's getting scrambled here. As far as record stores go, that doesn't really happen all that often. I went to one record store where they had just gotten in a bunch of albums, and they had a run of like Van Morrison's that were from the later 70s. And I don't think they'd priced them yet, but they were out and people were looking through them. And I wasn't sure exactly if those were going to be priced right or not, so I passed on those too because I already had a stack of other stuff that I was going to buy. That's always the problem when it comes to records, isn't it? Your eyes are always bigger than your wallet, and you always don't focus on what you've got. You're always looking at what else you can get. I'm babbling. I'm sorry, but I hope that answers your question. If it doesn't, let me know and I'll redo this, or I'll redo this part of the video, or you can dock me an entry. But all right, this thing's 17 minutes long. I'm going to wrap it up here. Once again, congratulations on 500 subs. That's a monumental task. And hopefully there will be 500 more, and we'll be doing a 1,000 subscriber contest. I'm sure you will. No doubt. No doubt in my mind. So, yeah, let me know if this entry is going to be acceptable for you. And like I said, congratulations. This is Jeff. I'm signing off. I'll talk to you guys again soon. Take care.